we get so tied up to the results, but really the thing that really matters is the effort. And only we know that, right? Inside.
And I know exactly how you feel. I volunteer once a week at a high school. And I was at this high school this week and I told these teenagers, some of them are 1 or 2 years from graduating. And I told them, I said, if you're the smartest one in your circle, you need to get a new circle. And I try to explain to them that there are circles that they're around. The people that are around you, their influences are so important. They should make you better. They should challenge you. If you're around people where it's easy cheesy and that nobody's trying, everybody's doing half effort, it's no fun. So I was telling these high schoolers that if you're the smartest one in your circle, get a new circle. Because of my life, when I look back on my career, my military career, my professional career, I was around some incredibly smart people. And whenever I had a chance, I would pick their brain.
What a pleasure to be joined by Sergeant Major Roy Lewis, retired after 36 years in the military. And I know you've got so many wonderful lessons you've learned along the way.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. I'm glad to be here and hopefully enough to share some funny stories of just how this crazy ride has been all these years. My pleasure to be here.
So can we please start with you, but just before you joined the military, were you one of those people? I feel like the military is such a wonderful thing to give young men and women kind of a rites of passage. Were you a bit lost in that you really needed the discipline from the military, or was there other reasons why you joined?
Well, that's a great question because believe it or not, a lot of people don't realize I'm from New York and I come from this little town called Highland Falls, New York. And it's about an hour from New York City. But however, it's the little town that's connected to the famous West Point Military Academy in New York. And my relatives, they all moved up there in the 60s for work. So my impression of the military was West Point. So to be honest with you, I remember we went to go pick my dad up from work one evening and I saw these new freshmen come in and these upperclassmen came out of nowhere and they were like screaming at these kids. And I was like, I didn't want any part of that. I was like, that was my impression of the military. So I did graduate high school and I did 2 years of college. And my major, believe it or not, was in music and theater.
Wow.
And I wanted to, this is before you had American Idol and The Voice and all those other kind of stuff, but I wanted to excel in music and stuff like that. But I went just like many thousands of people. I went to New York City after graduation and tried my best to make it. And I remember exactly, Lawrence, where I was. I was walking out Broadway and I just realized, I said to myself, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And not that I couldn't do it. It's just I didn't want to do this anymore. So I had to find some skills. I didn't want to go back to college again. So I remember telling my wife, I married my college sweetheart, who I'm still married to today, and 42 years. Woo.
Oh,
and I told her, I said, I'm going to go check out this Army thing. And she said, okay. Next, I was on a bus headed to basic training. And that's all I remember. I had signed my life away. I was terrified. I've never been that nervous in my life, but not knowing that it was the best decision of my life, I signed up. I joined the military and it was one of the best decisions.
That's so interesting with your background, because when you say, I'm retired after 36 years of service, you don't think that I wouldn't imagine that you're this real creative type. Like you said, music and theater and, you have a real creative side to you. So how was that, like the initial shock of just being in the military? I feel like it's the opposite of creative, right? It's about fitting in and you have to, they want to teach you discipline and instill, the very strict form of command and things like that. Was it hard for you to adapt to that, or were you young enough where it wasn't too difficult?
Yeah. It's funny though, because I found the opposite to be true. I found out that for some reason, waking up every day being challenged, it invigorated me. It was something that I woke up and it was just like a challenge every day to get through it and to get through the physicality, the physicalness of it, the discipline of it. I had that already, but I tell this funny story that my parents were really strict when I was a kid, and we always had chores. And then when I went to basic training, I couldn't understand why the guys were stressing out because the drill sergeants were screaming and yelling about mopping and sweeping. And I remember telling the guys, I get yelled about that on a weekly basis. So I have to kind of give kudos to my parents. I always say that they were very, I thought they were too strict at times, but it paid off. When I was in that military environment where I had to be accountable, like I said, it invigorated me. It got me, I just found my niche.
That's so interesting. That's exactly the Jocko Willink expression where he says discipline equals freedom, right? You said you found it invigorating. And I think a lot of people, I work in real estate and I'm an entrepreneur, so I don't have a set schedule. And a lot of people I work with really struggle with that. But I'm a very disciplined person. So for me, it's not a problem. But a lot of people really struggle when they don't have to be at an office at a certain time and they don't have a structure. When you have self-imposed structure, if you don't have discipline, it's actually really difficult. It kind of contrary to what you think, but Jocko talks a lot about when you're disciplined, it gives you freedom because you don't even have to think about what you're doing because you have the strict schedule to get important things done. And it gives you this kind of sense of freedom.
Yeah, you're right, Lawrence. And you're talking my language because one of the things about discipline, you find out who you really are. You find out what you're made of. You're right. We're living in a world today where a lot of people are, especially the generations now, where they feel entitled. They don't have any resiliency. They quit very easily. And I know that when I came in, I found out some things about myself being in the military that I thought I didn't think I was tough to make it, but I found out some things, how far I could push myself, how much I could go the extra mile. And like I said, it got me fired up. It was a motivational thing for me. Or whatever. I came into the platoon and I started out as just one of the soldiers. I ended up being a squad leader to eventually end up being a platoon leader as well. Well, my drills just saw that in me. And I was at first, my first initial reaction was like, no, get somebody else. I'm not really that. But that's one thing about leadership. Leaders will develop other leaders, will nurture other leaders. And I'm just those people in my life. I tell a story, for example, when I'm trying to explain, I tell the story of my 10th grade history teacher when I was in high school and I was taking her history class and I was killing it, Lawrence. I was getting straight A's, just killing it. Well, I came in one day and she said, hey, you are doing so well. I want you to take honors history. That's where all the smart kids went to. And I said, thank you. I'll stay right where I'm at. I'm wonderful. I'm good. Well, long story short, Lawrence, I went kicking and screaming to honors history. And I have to say, to my embarrassment, I called that woman every name in a book. She was an older white woman. I played a couple of race cards. And I remember I took the final exam and I got my exam paper and I got a B+. And I ran to her office. And I said, Mrs. Ross, her name was Mrs. Ross. I said, Mrs. Ross, I got a B+. And she just sat there. She looked at me very calm. And she just said, very good, and walked away. And right there in the hallway, I had an epiphany. I said, oh my gosh, this woman who ignored all my complaining, who thought enough of me to push me to make me better. And I said, that's how I want to live. That's my love language right there.
So Roy, that's so powerful because you were talking about something that she did decades later and how it fundamentally changed you. It gave you that like that confidence, and you can look back now and realize it was one of those pivotal moments in life. And I think that's just such a good example for people to remember that what they might think is kind of a small action can fundamentally change someone's life. Just being supportive or pushing someone or, challenging somebody in the right way. And I just think that's one of the most incredible things about life. It's only when we're older that we can look back at those times. But in the moment for her, she was probably just, she obviously cared about you. She was a good teacher. But for her, it probably wasn't the most fundamental thing in her life, but it really changed yours. I just think that's remarkable.
Oh, she changed me for forever. And there's like countless, I'm sure you, as well as everyone else, have those key people that invested in your future and changed you. And I learned from these particular people one important thing I learned was not to be afraid of failure, not to be afraid of challenges, because everybody's knee-jerk reaction is to run away. Everybody has that safety mechanism to be safe. Everybody wants to play it safe. But I would soon learn how that when met with a challenge, it wasn't that to make me fail, that, I could succeed. Great. If I didn't succeed, it also gave me another course of action where I would sit back and take that failure as a learning lesson. What could I have done better? What could I do to next time when I'm faced with this challenge, how can I overcome? So I was able to manage success and failure adequately. Whereas people are just like, they're just afraid. People just do not like to fail. But me, over the years, I look at it like a muscle. When you go in the gym, you're an athlete. I train people and you bring them in the gym, and the first week, if you can get people to the first 2 weeks of weight training, oh my gosh, they're like, that whole 2 weeks, my arms hurt. I'm tired. I don't feel like it. And as a coach, I have to sit there and say, you will do this. You will lift these weights. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, they start getting stronger, start getting more confident, and they start being able to train harder and lift a lot more weights. And it's just that way with success and failure. It's like a muscle. You have to train it. So nobody does anything 100% correct. And even my children are adults now. My son is an officer in the regular Army. My daughter's a business owner. When they were younger, coming up, they come to me and say, with their head down, and they know I'm going to ask them. They know I'm going to ask them who, what, when, where, and why. And when they come to me, they like saying, well, I say, okay, what did you do different? What were your expectations? Have you done everything possible to be able to meet those goals? And after we kind of have a goal session and we talk about it, they walk away with a little bit more clarity. And I push them right back out there to do it again.
I love that idea of embracing failure. So I'm from England originally, but I've been in Chicago 23 years. And, Michael Jordan's famous for saying that lovely quote about, I'm the best because I've missed more shots than anyone in history. I've missed.
Yeah, I saw that quote.
Shots.
Yeah.
But he's the one stepping up to the plate and learning from it. And I think any exceptional person, whether in sports, whether in business, whether in almost anything in life, they're not afraid to push the limits. And that's going to, by necessity, you're going to fail sometimes. And as long as you learn from it, it's not really a failure. And I think my son's about to turn 4, and that's a lesson I want to teach him is we can only control like effort in certain situations. And if we put all the effort in and the chips don't fall our way and we lose, be proud of the effort, not about the result. I'm more proud of something where, I'll give you an example. I fought a really good former world champion and I lost the match, but I think it was one of the best I ever performed. And I was actually quite proud of myself that night. When I was younger, I had a professional MMA fight, and last minute there was an opponent switch, and the guy they gave me wasn't very good. And he was a lot underweight, and I won in the first round. And I remember the next day I got up and I ran a half marathon with a friend of mine who was a runner because I didn't feel good. I felt like I cheated myself because it was too easy. I trained for, 8 weeks. I dieted, I sacrificed, pushed myself. And I beat a guy who wasn't on my level, didn't have a great record, and I just didn't feel good. And I think that's such a good lesson is that we get so tied up to the results, but really the thing that really matters is the effort. And only we know that, right? Inside.
Yeah, you're right. And I know exactly how you feel. I volunteer once a week at a high school. And I was at this high school this week, and I told these teenagers, some of them are 1 or 2 years from graduating. And I told them, I said, if you're the smartest one in your circle, you need to get a new circle. And I try to explain to them that there are circles that they're around. The people that are around you, their influences are so important. They should make you better. They should challenge you. If you're around people where it's easy cheesy and nobody's trying, everybody's doing half effort, it's no fun. So I was telling these high schoolers that if you're the smartest one in your circle, get a new circle. Because of my life, when I look back on my career, my military career, my professional career, I was around some incredibly smart people. And whenever I had a chance, I would pick their brain. I taught my children, and I even told these high schoolers, I said, hey, let me show you a trick. I said, find someone that's doing something that you've always wanted to do and go up to that individual and ask him or her, what did they do to get to where they are? And I said, be prepared to take notes because they will talk your ear off. That is free knowledge. And I've done that so many times where I'm just like individuals that took the time out and said, hey, I'm glad you asked. I did this and that. And it only makes sense. You follow the duplication process. Why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah. And most successful people, it's human nature. They love talking about themselves, right? So if you ask it in a nice, respectful way, they are going to share the secret to their success.
Oh man, I'm taking notes. I'm asking questions, whatever. And then I tell them to be prepared because some people, after a while, they will help you. They will give you opportunities. I guess the new word today is called networking.
Yeah.
So people will see that you have an interest and they will give you opportunities to be successful. But here's the caveat. And I'm thinking about putting this on a t-shirt. Here's the caveat. Do the damn work.
Yeah.
Do the work. Because I don't know if you ever read a book he's one of my favorite sports heroes is David Goggins.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, I read his first two books. He's the only military member of the American military that's gone through Air Force pararescue, Navy SEAL training, the Army Rangers. I think he's been through all the branches of that training. And I think he's 45 now, and I think he still runs ultra marathons, I think. So he's just insane. But he's not telling people to do exactly what he's doing. He's just talking about the work ethic, the resiliency, not to quit. And that's the inspiration I draw from that.
Yeah, that's true. It's like we want people to show us the recipe, but we have to put the effort in. And I feel like a lot of people, they want us to give them the cheat code that requires no effort. But any successful person has put the work in. It's about both. You have to have the recipe or the goals, the structure, and then you have to do the work. You have to have both together.
Yeah, I was telling the teenagers, I said, I'm cracking up laughing at you guys. I said, you guys are a mess. They said, what do you mean? I said, these guys, like, you take somebody like Snoop Dogg. I said, the guy doesn't live in Compton. He doesn't live in Compton. I said, that's an act. And I said, he's taking all your money. And he lives in a gated community. His children go to the best schools. I said, you guys, you have to be you. You have to figure out who you are. I mean, it's easy to copy and imitate anyone else, but I want to know when you walk into a room, who are you? What are you all about?
Sorry to interrupt, but Roy, that's such an interesting point. So I've been thinking about this as a relatively new dad, and every kid in high school just wants to be as average as they can and fit in. And then as soon as you get a bit older, then everyone wants to be exceptional and stand out. So like, how do I try and explain that to my son? Because no adult wants to be average, right? Everyone wants to be special in their own different way. But, kids are mercilessly bullying each other if anyone's different, right? So people tend to want to fit in. But so how, like when you're talking to these kids, how do you see this generation compared to, the past generations? Because you touched on it a bit where you think a lot of them lack a bit of resilience. And, I feel like every generation feels like the next generation is softer than their generation, right?
Yeah, you're right. I think it's a two-part problem. One of the problems is that the example of leadership is not there. I'm just going to put that right on the table. This past, 8 to 10 years, I haven't seen a strong, except for certain people, example of leadership for kids to follow. And that disturbs me because the people that inspired me, it's a fundamental truth. Leaders create other leaders. And I just don't see that. And when I meet with my high schoolers, I tell them, I said, listen, I've done all my stuff. I've swam all my rivers. I've slayed all my dragons. My job is to pay it forward. And I feel as an elder statesman, that's one of my jobs. I can't run anymore and I did that stuff a long time ago. However, my job is to coach, train, and mentor you and pass on the knowledge for you to go further. And I tell these young kids, I said, hey, the way you pay me back is you go further. You take what I've given you and you go further. I don't want your money. I don't want your adoration. I have no aspirations to be famous or be rich or anything. But the way you pay me back is you take what I give you and you take it and you go further. And young people, I tell them, I said, you guys got to get some courage because first of all, behind all that behavior is fear. I notice when I'm working with teenagers, especially teenagers, you're right. They want to fit in. They don't want to be different. And I saw that in my son. If I can kind of tell you a real quick short story about my son I had him going to private school and he kind of begged me to go to public school. And I guess the only one time I went against my wife's wishes, I let him go to public school. And of course, his grades went in the tank. And I got deployed in 2007 to Iraq. And I was doing some training and my wife had called me on the phone. I was in Fort Carson in Kansas. And my wife called me and my son had just been arrested by the police. By this time, he was 18 years old. And I tell you, Lawrence, I've never been in the back of a police car, never, maybe a ticket, maybe a driving ticket, but that's about it. And I remember getting that call and my knees literally buckled because as a father, I went into shock and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my son's going to be, threatened or beat up or raped in prison or whatever, in jail, whatever. So I flew back and I found out he had not one, not two, but 5 counts against him. He was joyriding in a car with some guys one night, stolen vehicle, weapon in the car, drug paraphernalia, and two other things right there. And to make the story a little bit shorter, he was on a year probation. He had to go back and forth to court. He pleaded not guilty. He was exonerated. But by that time I was in Baghdad and I called back to my wife and I said, how's he doing? And my son went through a depression. He made a mistake and you'll learn this about your children. You'll learn when they're really sorry about things, when they really or have remorse about things. And my son was just staying in the house, not hanging out with his friends. And I called him on the satellite phone from Iraq, from Baghdad. And I said, what's up? He says, well, no, nothing. I know I messed up and you, mom, I know I disgraced the family. I said, what did I teach you? And well, you said that, everybody makes a mistake. And I said, no, yeah, that's true. I did teach you that. I said, but what's the rest of it? Well, you said that people are going to watch me to see what I do when I get up. Bingo. There you go. Because I said, you're right. I said, if you get up, people are not going to remember that you made this mistake. They're not going to even remember it. But they're watching you to see what you do, what you do when you get up. Are you going to get up and stand on your own 2 feet, or are you going to wallow in sadness and just dwell on this thing that's going to prevent you from growing? And I used the analogy when he was a little boy, but your son's age, he used to watch Bambi all the time. And there's a scene in that movie when Bambi gets shot and his dad comes out of the woods. And I love the scene. He goes, Bambi, get up. And Bambi's like trying to get up, whatever. And then Bambi gets up and he saves the day and all that other kind of stuff. So, but my son, he got up, he joined the military and he graduated high school. He joined the military. He came in as enlisted. And then all of a sudden he qualified to be an officer. So in 2000, as time went on, as I can go a little bit forward here, he got his commission as a warrant officer. And 2008, I had to go down and pin his bars on. And I gave him his first salute. And I remember I whispered in his ears when he's at the position of attention, I said, okay, military-wise, you outranked me. I said, but genetically, I can still bring you downtown to Chinatown, sir. And he goes, no, Dad, you don't have to say that. I said, no. When you see Forrest Gump, he said, Lieutenant Dan through the whole movie. I said, you earned it. And I said, now you got up and nobody's not going to remember that, any of that. But now I told him, I said, now you become a role model to the other young people because you've been in jail. He sat in jail for 2 weeks before we got him out. I said, I've never been in jail. I said, but you never know. You meet a young man or a young woman that may be going through some trouble like that, and you are a role model now, and you can coach them because you've been there, done that, and you got the T-shirt, and you live to tell about it. And that's what it's all about. So you become an example leader. You are a leader, and leaders make leaders. I know it's a long answer, but I mean, I really get passionate about that.
Roy, that's beautiful. And I couldn't agree more. I don't think anyone loves redemption more, like someone that's down and then they climb back up. If someone just comes out from when they're young in life and everything they touch turns to gold, doesn't really resonate with people. But it's when people come back, and I think, we're recording this a few days after Mike Tyson had that return to the ring against Jake Paul. And he is so beloved now. And, for a while he was hated. There was the rape case, and then he bit Evander Holyfield's ear. I remember watching that fight live with my friends. I was a huge Tyson fan in England. I think I was 21 at the time. And he lost to Holyfield and then he had the rematch and he bit his ear. And I just remember feeling so let down and disappointed. And now, I mean, he's rebuilt his image and he's just so beloved. And I think that fight was so interesting because so many people that they still, people of our generation that grew up watching Tyson in the 80s, he's like this unstoppable force of nature. We're all kind of rooting for him to turn the clock back. But unfortunately, Father Time is undefeated. We can't go back. So it was exactly the result.
It's like young people, they don't understand the work ethic. Like Kobe Bryant was another great athlete. Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, and people, we live in a society, I call it a microwave society. People just want things to magically happen. Or like Stephen Curry. I tell a lot of the kids, when you see Stephen Curry take a 3-point shot, he's been practicing that forever. He's in the gym with his trainer and he's probably got like 100 basketballs and he's shooting that shot. And what you're seeing is the results of that work. He doesn't, and these people, when I tell them, I was telling a lot of young people, I said, matter of fact, when I was giving them a lecture, I said, I guarantee your success. I guarantee it. And they said, how can you do that, Sergeant Roy? I said, if you do the work, you got it. It's inevitable. It's part of the equation. But if you, for one point, if you jeopardize and you hang out with the wrong people and you jeopardize your work ethic and you don't discipline yourself, it's not fair for you to get the same results. And I think that's what the world is telling the young people, that you can get the same results with the least amount of effort. That's not true. That is totally not true. Well, but I did guarantee them that they will be successful if they put in the work.
Well, Roy, it's such a crazy time. I just learned this the other day. I don't know if you're aware of this, but you have these influencers that they make their money through Instagram and, they got pictures of them in front of planes and cars and things like that. So I heard that not only can you rent the space for $70 for 15 minutes, to snap a few photos. And most of the time the cars and the planes are kind of props. They're not even real. But a lot of these people, they'll say, hey, I made $80,000 this year on being an influencer. But what they don't say is they actually spent $76,000 on all the promotion and marketing, trying to fake the lifestyle that they don't need. So you're going around in circles. You're not even getting anywhere. It's just, so I really feel for the kids, because I remember I was in college and the internet was just kind of starting, but I had a normal upbringing, probably you and I had a very similar childhood in the sense of we didn't have this constant distractions and dopamine hits from phones and just the availability to look. It's got to be very intimidating for a kid who's still trying to find himself and say, I love jujitsu or I love boxing and everything. You're looking at all the world's best athletes and clips of this excellence. And you assume that it's normal, but it's not normal. You're watching the absolute elite of the elite of 8 billion people on the planet. And that's just right on your phone. And you think, oh, how am I going to compete against that? So, or if it's a girl, all these women have these filters and the photos are changed around and they're not real. And people think the expectations of beauty are all, out with reality. So I really do feel for the youth today. I think they have so many more challenges than we had growing up just because of technology.
And part of that, if I could add to that, and I think part of that problem is the older generations, you can't let them figure that out for themselves. You have to have a mentor. You have to have someone. My children are very fortunate enough. I've been able to be there to counsel them. I remember when my son decided to get married and start his military career, and I sat him down. He was like 22, and I said, okay, you're my oldest son. I said, but now I am an advisor. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I trained you, and I believe I trained you well. I said, but you can call me at any hour, any time, and I'm there for you to give you advice, and you can make your own decisions. And he called me yesterday. He calls me up and we have great talks. He talks about, he's in military intelligence. So he does some stuff he can't talk about. And we talk about leadership struggles and things that he has to deal with. My daughter's a business owner. When she started her business, she's in, like I said, her husband does martial arts and she does a hair salon. She runs a hair salon. And we talk about how to deal with customers and how to, customer relationships and stuff like that. So, but my point is that the young people, they cannot do it on their own. I think that's a piece that's missing. They need the older folks because, I'm 64, and I have like I said, I have a world of knowledge. You talk about the other generation. I have years and years of experience that I can pass on to the younger generation to get them and guide them. And I think that's what's lacking today. The young people are going out there and they're just flying by the seat of their pants. They're trying to figure it out and not, having when they fail, they just not getting any guidance. They go into Wikipedia or Google or whatever to try to figure it out. And that's one thing I tell people with technology. Don't get me wrong. I love technology. Technology is making this interview happen today. However, technology will never replace relationship. You have to have relationship with another person. You can't automate that. I know where people are crazy about AI. It's not a replacement. Looking someone in their eyeballs and holding them accountable is the best connection you can ever make with an individual.
I couldn't agree more on the power of relationships. My whole business in real estate is all relationship based. So I couldn't agree more. Roy, when you said, like you said, you kind of sat down with your son and said, I'm here as a role of advisor now, he's only 20s. Was he very receptive to that? Because I feel like you just reminded me that I had a really good relationship with my dad growing up. He was an amazing father, but there's something happened where he basically, with my brother and I, he basically said, once you're 18, he was like, I've kind of done my job. He was so hands-on. He was taking us to activities and sports and I have so many great memories, but it was just so funny. The difference between that. And then as soon as I reached 18, I went off to college and he was just like, okay, my job's done now. I want to do my own thing. And he's still like that to this day. And it makes me a little bit sad because I kind of wish I had a bit, there's times where I wish I could have a bit of fatherly advice still. And he's not really available now, but it's so weird because he was such a wonderful present father when I was young. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, how your son took that when you offered that guidance.
Well, my wife and I, we're the patriarchs of the family, and I've already talked to my son-in-law. I have a son-in-law. I have 2 grandsons and I have 4 granddaughters, but I told my son's wife, I said, hey, when he got married to her, I said, I'm giving you a man. I've trained him. Here he is. If he gives you any trouble, give me on a celly. Just call me. No problem. And there's a funny story behind that. It was one night he said told his wife he was going to go out and get some milk, and he was gone for about 2 hours. So I was at home and I was getting ready to go to bed. My wife was like still up, and I said, "What's going on?" And she told me, "Well, your son is, his wife is looking for him and this and that." I said, "Okay." And a good thing about my children, both my son and daughter, when they see my number on a caller ID, they will pick up. So I call him and he's like, "Hey, Dad, what's up?" Well, "Hey, partner, you know what time it is, right? Your wife's looking for you." "Oh, what happened was, you don't owe that to me. Okay. All right. I'm just giving you some advice. Your wife's looking for you. You need to go fix it." And I don't know what was said to him. I don't know. I was taken care of. But and I tell that story because I've elected myself to be the model, I guess, the role model for all the men in my family. My son-in-law knows that as well. I expect the men in my family to be men. It's no exception. No argument about it. Even my grandson, he was acting up and he ran to my daughter-in-law and he runs to my daughter-in-law and he's sitting there, "Mom is the boss of everything." And I looked at him, I was like, "No, bro." I said, "Listen, I'm the Lion King. You're like Kimba. You're like the little lion, okay?" And my daughter-in-law is like cracking up laughing. And she's sitting there going, "Yeah, he's the boss, And I respect boundaries. In our family, we respect boundaries, but I am like I said, I'm patriarch of the family. And I let even my daughters and stuff like that, I let them know that, hey, I'm not bossing you around, but that's my role. I'm not going to just turn and walk away, in another direction. I'm available. Now, yes, they can tell me that, hey, I got this and I do respect their rights and their boundaries, but you know how life is. Sometimes things start getting out of control. So I'm kind of like the decision maker. If people start getting crazy and all that kind of stuff, okay, time out, everybody. We're going to go this way and calm down. So I'm respected in that regard, right, Dad? So, and I really think that's the responsibility of every senior person for their family. It's very easy for me to kind of go fishing and just go the other direction and just kind of say that's your problem. But I think they really do appreciate that. They really do. And it keeps our family together. We stay together, and when we get together for holidays and stuff, that we have a blast. We really do. And I have one rule. They all know that my son is a jokester like me. He does, sometimes he jokes a little bit too much, and I have to kind of bring him down a couple of pegs and say, hey, when people start crying and getting upset, you need to calm down. So, but it all works good, but I just think that I know it's a long answer, Lawrence, but the thing that bothers me with technology is we're becoming so disconnected as people. And we have to stay connected, stay connected with your son. I mean, it speaks volumes with your son, with your wife. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Hey, how's your day? What's going on? What are you thinking today? Just some really simple things. And it speaks volumes. It keeps people connected. And we can't leave that up to another rule I have in my family. When it's my birthday, please don't send me an electronic birthday card. My grandchildren, they go to the store and get paper and color it and magic markers. I said, now that's a birthday card. I like that. So, but don't send me an electronic email birthday card. That seems so insensitive. I'll take a phone call, but won't take a text. So that keeps us all engaged.
I love that. Well, what was it like when you're looking back many years later, being deployed in the Middle East? How was that experience, and what was it like for you?
Well, I was over there before they shortened up the deployments. My deployment was an entire year. By the time I got out, they were shortening them up to like 6 months to 8 months. But I was there for a year. And one thing I did notice is that the, individuals, their families and stuff, you had to have a strong base foundation for your family. My wife, I have to take my hat off to her. She ran all our affairs. She took care of everything. And she would, we'd talk on Skype. And I told her, I said, hey, I can tell, I'm not supposed to tell you what's going on because I was on a special ops team, to be exact. And I said, but if you start freaking out, we can't talk, but she handled everything really well. And because, we've been married, 42 years. I married my college sweetheart. So we've been married and we really built a strong foundation for our family. And it really paid off because I saw some just sad things too. People, younger soldiers, which I would never recommend. I always get on these younger soldiers when they get ready to go to basic training. They marry their girlfriend immediately and they don't know each other.
Right.
And when they have that time where they're separate, it's a high level of just infidelity and adultery and stuff going on. I saw a lot of stuff going on, marriages that just, couldn't stand up to the separation time. And I had a lot of my guys that are on my team, fellow soldiers, like, how's your wife? Are you worried about this? I said, no, I'm not worried at all. And plus we're also of the Christian faith as well. Did a lot of praying together and talking and praying. And that's been the pillar of our family and it's kept us together, but just being able to, and even before that deployment, my whole entire military career, I think I've been on 4 or 5 deployments and never had a worry about that. My wife is a really good Army wife. She handled the kids, the finances, the bills when things break down. And she's passing that knowledge on to my daughter-in-law. Because my son's been in probably 17 years now. So, we had a little bit of a rough patch because my son was doing a deployment in Afghanistan. And there was one day they had a suicide bomber on the complex and thank God, nothing happened to him, but my daughter-in-law started freaking out and my wife just kind of chimed in and said, hey, this is what you need to do. Because my daughter-in-law was getting ready to call a brigade. And I said, you can't go up to the headquarters. Then you have to follow the proper channels. And my wife walked her through all that. But a family and everything, it's work. It's just work. You just have to do the work. And the key word that comes to mind that these days is distractions. There's a lot of distractions out there. People get so bogged down with distractions such as like the internet and people they're not connected with each other. Just so a lot of busyness and just distractions going on. And people not dialing in. And when the thing that irritates me when bad things do happen, people come out of the woodwork and, we should have did this. That was the time to do that, not when it's too late. So we say, just, stay connected, stay dialed in.
That idea of just you being away and having just complete security and peace and happiness in your family. And it must have been so nice because you just reminded me when you were talking. One of my childhood friends, he did 2 tours in the Middle East. And one of them, he, like you said, a younger guy, he proposed to his girlfriend. They didn't know each other too well. While he was away, she was cheating on him, and then they broke up right after. And I think between that and then just some of the awful things he saw when he was away, he was a fundamentally different person. He was always kind of happy-go-lucky before, and then after that, he's much more serious and a little bit sad. And it's real tough. And then you hear those statistics, like I think there's been more deaths from suicide from military vets than they've been killed in combat the last 50 years. Do you have to overcome any kind of PTSD when you came back for some things you saw, or for you, just like you said, you have faith, you have family? Seems like that's the key to reintegrating back after you've been away.
Yeah, I had a little bit of post-traumatic stress disorder to sounds. I think when my wife and I were at the beach, and I think the one time she did notice it, we were in a hotel room, and you know how in the hotel people are slamming the doors.
Yes.
You can almost hear the door slamming, whatever. I was in the room, somebody slammed the door, and my wife saw me do a quick move to respond to that. And also too, around the 4th of July in the States, oh my gosh, they're just doing firecrackers all night long. And it kind of, to me, it sounds almost like gunfire. So, when I was over there for a year, I had to retrain my brain. One of the things that Americans do, and we're getting better at it, is just that I had to retrain my brain was over there to have situation awareness. That when I would walk into a place, and I still do this today, my wife, I didn't know it, but my wife says that when I go to a restaurant, I never sit with my back to the door. I'm always facing where I can kind of scan the room, and just always aware of just when people that come into the room and just the surroundings, how people are moving and stuff like that, any weird movements like that. And it's funny though, how they're teaching that now in schools with these active shooters now.
Yes.
They said the number one reason why people are getting injured and stuff, because when they have an active shooter, they freeze. People just freeze, and they just stand there. Well, now they're just doing training now. They're telling them to make noise and throw things and make all, because for some reason that starters on an active shooter. They're only there for a split second to do some damage and then move on. But yeah, I did have a little bit of post-traumatic stress disorder, and and it's under control. It's not bad. I still have situation awareness that I think that's always stayed with me. I go to the airport or I'm in crowds and I'm looking at people, that might look suspicious or something like that. Always aware of that. And I even teach that to my friends, to even some of my female soldiers. I know in the military, we taught that. The Army just changed its policy just recently where soldiers were like, there's sexual harassment. Like if soldiers are out at a bar and you see a female soldier and she's in your unit or whatever, and she has a little bit too much to drink and it looks like she's going to get assaulted. Now soldiers are being trained. If you see something, say something. That's the new policy now. Because if they walk away, if something happens to that soldier or whatever, you didn't say anything, they're in trouble too.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good policy.
There's some statistic where a huge amount of America's youth would be unfit for service just because they're, overweight or in poor health. And I know that RFK Jr. has been talking a lot about just trying to make America healthy.
Yeah.
Again. Do you see that with the high school students when you approach them, just that there seems to be a bit of a problem with just general health starting from kind of a young age?
Yeah, it's funny though. I was having lunch with a friend this week. We were talking about that same thing. And I know, having been a drill instructor, they have a policy now when you join their military armed forces, then you have to kind of come in underweight. They let them, you got to lose some weight before you sign up. But I disagree on that, because having been a drill instructor, when they go through training, I know the Marines are 13 weeks, the Army is 10 weeks. I think the Air Force is 9. Army, the Navy, and Air Force are 9 weeks. But when they go through the training, they're going to lose weight anyway. It's inevitable. But to go even further on that, I would like to adopt a policy of what Israel does. Everybody has to serve. And here's why I think that is, because I think it would take care of your juvenile problem. Because I like when people, if you're going to live in a place or live in an area, you should take some responsibility for it to be here. You should, serve the nation because the nation is serving you. You shouldn't be over here free. And that goes for any nation, even your country. You know, I think and I've seen service change so many lives of so many young people. It's amazing. I mean, when our recruits would graduate, I can't tell you how many recruits that would come up to me after graduation and just with tears in their eyes and say, "Thanks for not quitting on me," you know. And I'm like, "Hey, you had it in you all along." You know, I was just there, just to cheer you on. So I think that that will solve the issue because here, and I know in the United States, our food is it's just really bad. I know when I was out of the country, the times that I've been out of the country, especially when I was in Baghdad, I didn't see one Burger King, one McDonald's. I didn't see any of that stuff. And I had some I don't know what I ate because we had to eat with the Iraqis, but that food was pretty good. It was made fresh every day. So I'm not a really big meat eater, but the seasonings and they don't use a lot of refrigeration. So the food's prepared fresh every day.
Yeah.
But with the young people and their worst enemy is Nintendo, Game Boys, all these gaming systems and stuff like that. And they've gone and created, you don't see kids play outside anymore. I mean, it's weird. When I was growing up, my whole neighborhood, we're always playing outside. Yeah, everybody's playing.
Yeah. Until it got dark, right? From end of school till dark, we're out playing 100%.
Oh, always outside, But nowadays, with these gaming systems and the way that they set up for kids to occupy their time, I mean, unbelievable. And I've seen, even when I was a drill instructor, I've seen kids come off the bus and they're not fat at all. They can't even run to the stop sign without breathing hard. And that's why someone said they make me look good. I'm sitting there going, well, I look like Superman. But the funny thing about that is after they get in shape and they graduate and they pass, some of the guys get a little cocky and they're like, "Hey, drill sergeant, I can outrun you. I could do this." And my response to that is, "Hey, I hope so. You've been here for 10 weeks. If I'm still outrunning you and outjumping you, I have not done my job."
Right.
So I said, "Hey, your job is to go further than me." So, and then they laugh and all that other kind of stuff like that. But yeah, young people, youth is, it's only there for a second. Use it.
Yeah. There's an expression, youth is wasted on the young, because you just don't appreciate youth and older. And you look back.
Gosh.
Yeah. Well, Roy.
Yeah. I mean, I just started I had a knee replacement done, but before I had it done, I used to run as well. And I wish I would have started much earlier because I guess I was always afraid of it. I didn't have anybody to run with. But when I started getting into running and stuff like that, I remember I ran my first 5 miles and, oh man, that felt so good. The endorphins of that. And I said, oh man, this is great. But it is what it is.
Roy, I'd love to ask you, just because, like you said, you've done such a fine job with your kids and your son you got this wonderful relationship with him now. If you could give me 1 or 2 bits of advice for fatherhood with my boy, he's a wonderful son, but he's turning 4 in a couple of weeks. So he's still really young, but he is so stubborn. Sometimes I look at him and I'm thinking, oh boy, we're going to have some fights when he gets older because he's just so, stubborn, strong-willed. And it's going to be challenging, I think, when he gets older. But is there any advice you can give? Because I want to have the same relationship that you have with him in decades to come.
Well, I can tell you why that problem is, because when God made you, when he made your son, he gave you a Xerox copy of yourself. So when you're sitting there talking to this young little boy, you're really talking at yourself. Because I give you an example. My son got in trouble and I had to go over to the school, to the principal's office. And I went in there and I told the principal, I said, what did he do? And the principal says, I'll let him tell you. So my son did this. He did this perfect imitation of the crocodile hunter, the accent and everything. And I'm sitting there and I'm biting my jaws, trying not to laugh. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, that's my boy. That's my boy. That's my boy. And he's got a sense of humor. He's just like me. But my advice I had to give you that I learned is just that as he grows, it's like, be his champion, listen to him. Because I came, like I said, I grew up with strict parents and stuff. And my dad was a good man. He's a good provider. But emotionally and mentally, we didn't connect on a lot of things, And I kind of missed that, but I had to learn to do that with my son. So when, like, for instance, if he knocked his glass over, now, if that were me when I was little, my dad was like, well, I get reprimanded. But now with my son, I had to learn to listen. I had to learn maybe it was an accident or maybe he's having a bad day. Give him a chance to express himself, to understand, if something could be going on. It's not always disobedience immediately. And then one of the things that I learned from his mistake when he got in trouble is that always stay close enough, because when he got past that situation when he was arrested, I went through a little bit of depression myself because I felt like I let him down. I should have been there. I should have protected him. Maybe if I was a little closer, maybe if I was saying no a couple of times, this would have never have happened. But I was trying to be cool. I was trying to give him a little bit of freedom and stuff. Maybe I gave him too much freedom. But to always check, because when they get older, they're going to try you. There's nothing you can do about that. Yeah. There's nothing. Don't try to be his buddy, because the thing is, I hold men responsible. Your children have to know what right looks like. They have to know what right looks like. And that comes from you and your wife. They have to know it. They just can't. They're not going to figure that out on their own. And I get mad at parents because they shouldn't be getting that from television. They shouldn't be getting that from celebrities. That comes from you. And when they have to choose, they always have you right here. They know that, hey, if something goes on, hey, my dad did tell me about this and I know what this is. And they know. And then if they do make a mistake, help them figure it out. I never use shame. And I see fathers do that too. They shame their kids, and you don't want to do that. Because like when my son went through that time, I could have said, hey, I told you so. Because that time my son was like cocky and thought he was like he can never get in trouble. But that was kind of hard to watch. But I heard God say, leave him alone, because he needs to go through this. You got to let him grow. He's got to go through his stuff, and just be close enough just for him to, when he's ready to reach out for you, he will. He will reach out. Yeah, because you are the pillar. You are the point person on point where he sits back, hey, my dad taught me this. And I talk to him, grown men to this day. My dad taught me this. My dad did this. My dad did this for me. My dad made me do this. And it speaks volumes. And I always told my wife, I said, I get mad. We have another saying in the military, stay in your lane. Like you have the mommy lane. And I told my wife, I said, you women got it made, man. My wife says, what are you talking about? I said, in the mommy lane, you get all the kisses, you get the hugs, you get all that stuff. And my wife said, you get stuck too. I said, yeah, I get all the heavy lifting. Dad, I need this. Dad, I need this for this. Dad, I need help with this. I said, my son has literally fall down, skin his knee, and run right past me, right into his arms of his mother. And he is 37. And if he's watching this, he knows I'm right. When he gets upset, he still goes in and puts his head right here on his mother's shoulder. I get a handshake. No, I take that back, because he still gives me a kiss on the cheek. So that's it. But yeah, stay in your lane. So like you and your wife, you guys are like a team. You're like a team working it out. And because they say, like the saying said, the mother always has the heart. You have the son, you have his will, that kind of thing. And he looks to you for leadership. That leadership has to come from you, not from people out on the street, not a singer, not a rapper. And I told my son, I said, if I saw Eminem walk down the street, I will walk up and punch him in the nose. Emma says, really? I said, yeah. And I said, yeah, you guys said that these guys are picking in your pocket. They're not leaders. So
that's really
long answer, but that's how my advice to you.
I love that. And I love what you said about not being his friend. I mean, of course, sometimes you're his friend, but sometimes you have to be the father and tell him things that he's not going to want to hear, but it's for his own growth and the betterment of him. So I think that's a distinction.
It has to come from you.
Yeah.
That's the lesson I learned. I mean, I did go through some depression when I just felt so bad because maybe I should have been a little tougher on him like that. And he's a wonderful kid. He's a good kid. But there's times when I kind of gave him a little bit too much rope when I didn't follow through and check on things. And I should have done that.
Well, Roy, like my dad always says, he's like, this is the one thing that there's no instruction manual for. You bring the baby home from the hospital and you just have to figure it out. And I feel like
Already booked, bro.
Yep.
They don't have one. I looked at the mattress.
Roy, what
I had to find something, man. They didn't have anything, man. I was just like, oh my. And I'm telling you, Lawrence, I'm not making it up. My wife would tell you, when we brought him home, I literally went in the nursery and stared at him for hours. And my wife was like, what's wrong? I said, he's going to ask me questions. I don't even know. I don't know how to do this. And the thing my wife said, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. And I did.
I'll never
I hope you all the best. You're a sharp young man. I hope you all the best. You're going to figure it out, man.
I'll never forget that feeling of driving him home from the hospital and just in the car thinking, I am so unqualified. I don't know the first thing about babies. I wasn't around younger brothers, younger cousins. And somehow you do figure it out. So that's beautiful.
Yeah. But I laugh at the part because I tell guys, I said, listen, God plays this joke on you. And they said, what are you talking about? I said, you got a Xerox copy of yourself sitting there. And there'll be times you're talking to him and it's just, he looks like you. He says the same things, and he wasn't even given a script. It's natural. It just happens.
So that's so true. Because when he does something that you're proud of, or that you smile, you're like, yeah, that's my boy. You're kind of proud. But I've been working on it. But when I was young, I had a horrible temper. And he also has this horrible temper. So he'll explode. And immediately I cringe and I think, oh God, that's for me too. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, son. I've given you my temper.
Oh, that is funny. That is so funny. That is so funny. It's so true. Yeah. And then my son, he's got a sense of humor. And when we get the family together, he'll have he's just like stand up. And the whole family's like cracking up laughing. And he's funny. But then again, with his son, his oldest son is my grandson. He's 14. And I remember I went to visit him in Germany and he was like, my grandson did something that he didn't like. And he says, well, he's doing this and that. And I said, hey, who's that sound like? And my son started busting out laughing. He said, yeah, that's me. Yep. And I said, I thank God he gave you a carbon copy of yourself, bro. And my grandson's a slickster, just like my son, a slickster. No,
Roy,
it's all good.
But they say the two biggest indications of, if you're going to be happy or not is what you do for your career and who you marry. These two big decisions. You've been married a long time. Mm-hmm. You obviously got a great relationship with your wife. One thing, I'm 45 and I just celebrated my 6th wedding anniversary. I've got a lot of my friends who want a family. They want to settle down and they're just struggling dating today with online dating. And like you said, distractions and everyone's always looking over people's shoulders. Like what else is out there? What's better? This abundance of It's been really challenging. I've got a lot of my wife's friends who I think they're great catches. A lot of my friends, I think they're great catches and they're really struggling, to be somebody. But I would say even a good marriage, I think my wife and I are very compatible. It's very easy. We see the world in the same way in many senses. We're very aligned. Even having said that, marriage is not always easy. There's times you butt heads and there's big decisions. So I'd love if you could I could just finally just pick your brain a little bit on what's your secret sauce? Because obviously you're doing something right. And, you mentioned her supporting you when you're in the military, overseas and the support system and obviously raising kids and grandkids. What are some of the things, like, I guess if I was coming to you for marriage advice, some of the lessons, tips you could give me?
Well, I tell a lot of young couples, the first thing is that you guys have to be friends. You have to be friends. You have to be each other's champion. My wife is like, we met in college and we really started out being friends in college and it did blossom into a relationship. And we started having breakfast and lunch together and we've been inseparable. I met my wife when I was 18, when I was a freshman. So I didn't see that coming. So it's just that one thing that I do notice about it where it kind of went into that. And it's now that we're older now, we're going full circle now because we don't have the children anymore. So now it's just us two again. And we were just talking about that where now we're getting back to having our coffee. We enjoy coffee together and going out and we'll get a pot of coffee, sit by a window in a restaurant and talk all night about everything and just be friends at the end of the day. And then I would say to your wife is that she's got to be your champion. And you got to be her champion. When things come back, you have to be that friend that I heard a saying that there's 3 kinds of friends. There's constituents, comrades, and confidants. constituents or people that you work with, but if they have the chance to throw you under the bus. And comrades are people that work with you, they're buddy, but they're trying to compete with you as well. But your confidants are the ones that know everything about you, but they still love you. And that is what you need to be to each other. You know the best and worst of each other, but you support each other. And you can't get that. But I've seen couples try to get that from still try to be a daughter, still try to be a son that lives at home, or bring a girlfriend or a buddy into a relationship. That's the wrong answer right there. Because at the end, when your life is over, God's going to stand, you're going to stand in front of God, and God's going to say, you're responsible for that woman. He's going to stand in front of her. You're responsible for that man. And that's where it lies. And your children need to see that. That's just as important. And my children, I remember my son said something a long time ago, and I remember me and my wife were going through some rough times at one time. And my son said something, I heard him say to my daughter that when we went through that rough patch, she said, "See, I thought mom and dad were going to get a divorce, but they worked it through." And I was like, wow, I didn't know that he had noticed that. But they know that family time is really important. And so I say to a lot of young people, again, you must be friends. You got to be that type of friend where you guys have to, the best and worst of each other. You support each other, and feel confident with being transparent with each other. You can't hold back any secrets, and the other interesting point about my wife is that I'm in a mixed marriage. So my wife is Caucasian. So she had to learn my culture and I had to learn her culture, and I had to be totally open as well as she did too, how she felt and stuff like that. And we were able to overcome, but she's my best friend. I tell her that all the time. And every day I tell her I love her. I don't want to, when she says she needs me, I stop. She gets my attention. She doesn't have to schedule an appointment with me. And I've done that before too, where I've gotten so busy and she just hadn't been able to get time with me. So I've been corrected in that area as well to be there. But that let her know that our relationship is, if this is not first, nothing else will work. There's no replacement. And I think a lot of people, when they start off in relationships, I'm terrified. I told my wife, if I had to start all over again, I said I probably would live with a house full of cats. I just wouldn't get married again. It seems like it's a lot of work because people don't understand relationships. They require a lot of work, but it's good work. It's not, once you get into the habit of it, it's natural, and you have to protect it. And your job is to be the keeper of the gate. That's a term I use, where you're responsible for a lot, what comes in and comes out of the relationship. You gotta be careful because sometimes there's people that are toxic. There's relatives that are toxic. You just have to stand there with your spear and protect it. That's how I am. So, and I love my family, and it pays off. It really does pay off.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I feel like when all's said and done, what are you going to be most proud of? It's going to be your family. I'm sure the satisfaction you're going to get from seeing your grandkids go on to do great things as young adults is going to be priceless. So you're such a wonderful, like you said, mentor and statesman and patriarch in the family. I'm so glad we connected. And I really appreciate you sharing some of those, because the things you said about fatherhood and marriage, that really resonates with me, because I'm in that stage of life now where I'm a bit of a later father, got married just before I was 40 and became a dad in my early 40s. And it's been a new challenge and one I'm really embracing. But I love hearing from people like you, because you're so far further along than me and you've been doing such a great job. So I really appreciate you sharing everything today.
You look good for your 40s, man. I thought you was at least about 25.
Roy, that's too kind. Thank you.
Man, you're a martial artist, man. That's at the game. You must be in good shape. You're still doing martial arts in your 40s, man. That's great, man. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
My hat goes off to you, man. I mean, the world is different now, but in my opinion, I think it's going to go full circle. I think we're going to start coming back to the basics again. People, like I said, I'm a little older than you. It's like it comes and goes in cycles. And people are going to start getting married again, because I know I got friends of mine, just went to my high school reunion about 3 weeks ago, and there was a bunch of my mates. They're still not married, and for whatever reason, but there's something about at the end of, I'm building a legacy. I look back and my children are happy. we overcome together, not only as our marriage, but as a family. We have the next generation of grandkids that are coming up. I get surprised. My son literally called me yesterday. When he calls me, it's a surprise. And he called me and said, "Hey, Dad, what's up?" And I say, "Hey, what's going on?" And I talk to his kids and his wife. My daughter calls me. And one thing I did this year, and I just felt the need to do it. I asked them, both of them, my son and my daughter, I said, just be honest with me. Where did I fail you as a father? And my son said, he said some things that was kind of hard to listen to. But overall, he just said, "Hey, you were there." He said, "You fell short here and I needed you here, but for the most part, you were there." That's what he said. And my daughter said the same thing too. And that made me feel better because they said I was there. I was engaged. And I think that's important as a father, as a wife. Be engaged with your children. Don't let them go out there and find other avenues of support because they will do that. And there's going to be times you're going to feel horrible because I always tease my son, we get into a dispute when he was younger. I said, "How long you been on the planet?" "Oh, I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that." I said, "Hey, nothing. You know nothing. I'm not your buddy." But he's grown to respect me. I respect him. He's a wonderful young man. He's raising his own family. My daughter's got 3 girls, and God bless my son-in-law. Stay in shape because he's a martial artist too. I said, "Do me a favor, teach my granddaughters how to fight." If you can teach them how to fight, then I won't have to worry about that. But it's okay. It's just fun watching everybody grow up. It's just fun. And I just told them, when I come in the room and shake my cup, just fill it with some drink. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
That's all.
I love it. Listen, I really appreciate you. And I'll put a link to your website on the show notes, but I'll leave you with the final thought if you just want to say a final message.
Well, I just want to tell people if they want to reach me, I have a website out there called speaksergeantroy.com. That's the word speak, SGT, Roy, all one word, .com. And reach out to me. Any questions, I'll be more than glad to talk about anything, leadership, family, professional, things like that. I would like to say is just stay connected. I love what you're doing, Lawrence, and shows like yours that keep people engaged. And I want to just see people do really well. Because as in the States, we just got through a tough election cycle. People were just going nuts. So now everybody's decompressing right now and people are trying to figure out where they want to go. But the sun still comes up. You have to function. You have to get up and face the day. And as far as you and your wife, I hope you guys are all the best. I'll leave you with this saying: behind every great man, there's a woman rolling her eyes. Okay? So be there, man. Your answer is yes. Yes, ma'am. I got it. Roger that.
All right. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, man.